Good morning. Yesterday we talked about quite a few things. Most do with the lineage of Abraham in relationship to where we are today.
Battery 1 connected to George's iPhone.
Related to where we are today on our journey, and we made reference to some of the things that Jesus had left with us in terms of understanding that we are indeed the light of the world, among other things, of course. So I want to ask if there are questions before Ms. Barbara picks up.
This is Valerie. I have a question, but it's not about anything that's...
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. In Genesis 1, that first chapter, starting around the 24th verse through the 28th verse.
Okay. Read them. Read them, please.
Okay, sure. It says, Then God said, Let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth after their kind, and it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, Let us make man in our image according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. And God created man in his own image. In the image of man, he created him, male and female. He created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. My question is, okay, I know he created man, but who, them, I mean, were they before Adam? Were these a different type of entities? Yeah. Hopefully we understand.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, that was it.
Okay. Was someone else about to say something? Okay. In the first chapter, this was more of a pattern as to what was being created. And when you get to the second chapter, 7th verse, it begins to talk about the actual forming of the Adam, which is male/female. The misnomer in that is that what happened in the first chapter is a repeat.
I can't do anything. I'm over here.
You can hardly hear me? Hello?
You're clicking buttons on there.
Get it back. Your device speaker has changed MacBook. I was trying to get out.
Would you please mute your phones? Thank you. There were, this was not a repeat in the second chapter of what occurred in the first. The occurrence in the first, as I said earlier, was a type of pattern or a format for creation itself. And the more specifics of the creation in terms of the forming of Adam, as well as the forming of the beasts of the field, you will find it in the second chapter, beginning with that 7th verse, as I said. So this is not two different or two separate creations.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone want to add to that? Okay. Any other questions?
So, Rev, we're still talking about that question that she said. Um, like you said, that first correction was the blueprint. And they moved from the blueprint and start putting everything together. So that's the way you're saying it.
Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, no more questions? No comments? Miss Barbara, are you ready?
I'm here, Pastor. How are you?
Doing well.
Great. Good morning, everyone. The thing that I wanted to do today was just to talk about Ishmael's sons, and to the extent that we're able to find out information what happened with them, as a way of not necessarily bringing some closure to Ishmael's sons, but to round out what we know about his sons. Hello.
Okay.
Okay, all right. In Genesis 16, we'll start there. Let's start with verse 11. This is when the messenger told told Hagar that she was about to, that she was pregnant, about to give birth to a son. This is Hagar, who had left because she perceived that she was being treated unfairly by Sarah, and so she left and ran off. But the messenger told her she was pregnant, about to give birth to a son, and was to call his name Ishmael, because the Lord heard her painful groans.
Like, do you know?
Hello. Verse 12 specifically is sort of a proclamation, prophesy of what would happen with Ishmael. It says he will be a wild donkey of a man. He will be hostile to everyone, and everyone will be hostile to him. He will live away from his brothers. Now that's one interpretation. I want to read verse 12 from the Living Torah by a fellow named Arya Kaplan, who translated the Torah and wanted to be as close to its traditions in terms of his interpretations as possible. And this is the way he said it. God said to Abraham, Sarah's wife, do not call her by the name. I'm sorry, this is verse 15. I'm going to 16. I will bless her and make her bear you a son. I will bless her so that you will be the mother of entire nations. Kings will be your descendants. Sorry about that. I'm in 17. I should be in 16. Sorry about that. Abraham was 99 years old. Pastor, give me a minute. Let me make sure my chapters are right. I have so much stuff going in. That's Abraham 16, 15. And I am in 16. 12. All right, I'm here. This is from the Living Torah. And it's verse 11, 16th chapter, verse 11. The angel of God said to her, you are pregnant and will give birth to a son. You must name him Ishmael, for God has heard your prayer. And so, here's the part in verse 12. He will be a rebel. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. Still, he will dwell undisturbed near all his brothers. So that's where I want to start today, because there are a couple of interpretations of that. And it's usually interpreted negatively only, about Ishmael being a wild donkey of a man, saying that he would have the freedom to be out there doing anything he wanted to do, and that he would always be against people and they would be against him. But there's another interpretation that I found as well. And I want to give you that as well as a context before we talk about his sons. One interpreter said that he shall be a wild ass of a man, his hand with everyone, and everyone's hand with him. He shall dwell over all his kinsmen. And this person interpreted as saying that he would be free to roam about. Ishmael would be free. With a cross-reference to Job 39:5, that he would engage in commercial ties with the surroundings, would enjoy the advantages in comparison with other nomads of the time. If you remember, there are other nomads from other people not in the line of Abraham, because Abraham was only one person in the line of Shem, but there were other nomads as well. So with that context, I wanted to share a little bit about some of the findings of what happened to Ishmael's sons. One of the promises related to what would happen to his seed. This is Genesis 16:10 and then Genesis 21:18. The heirs of Ishmael would be numerous. That's what the promise said. And it was repeated twice in Genesis, that a seed that could not be numbered for multitude. That was repeated in Genesis 16:10 and Genesis 21:18. That he would be that he is the father of Arabs. And if you take a look at the perspective in terms of Arab people now and Muslims specifically, if you look at Spanish and Russian, Chinese, French, and English, and the millions and millions of people who speak those languages, Ishmael is purportedly the spiritual father of the Muslims, and was called a prophet by Muslims. If you look at the numbers of people worldwide, one in about every 7, and maybe more now, 1 in every 7 or 8 people, inhabitants of our planet, is a Muslim. That's a lot of people. Many more than 600 million Muslims in the world, up to 800 million, some people believe. It's the second in size in terms of religion, only to Christianity, just a generic Christianity. It's larger than any one branch of, quote unquote, what's called Christianity. There are more Muslims than Catholics, Roman Catholics. In other words, this promise that they would multiply is fulfilled, and you can see it before your very eyes. You don't even have to look just at the Middle East, but if you look at the parameters of Africa, the United States, all the parameters where Muslims are located, you can see that the heirs of Ishmael are everywhere. Again, Ishmael's name means God hears. A second part of that promise was that was a geographical promise, if you will, that they would that they would be a great nation, a large municipality, using today's vernacular. The initial home of the Ishmaelites was Arabia, and if you put it in context, the initial home was about the size of the Mississippi River, the United States on the eastern side of the Mississippi, including Texas and California. It was huge. It ran from, I mean, if you look at, I can't even put it into words. The original Arabs moved and ascended hundreds and hundreds. They ascended hundreds of thrones. They established their religion. They established their language. They established colonies in the islands of the Indian Ocean, from the Euphrates all the way to the islands of the Indian Ocean. That Arab empire stretched even into Nigeria, Mesopotamia, huge. What I'm trying to relate to you is the impact of the hugeness of this nation that derived from Ishmael. It said that the Lord delivered it into Ishmael's hands, the Middle East. In other words, the land in the center. In the Middle East, it's the meeting place between three continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Three races, white, yellow, and black. They had large centers of civilization in Europe and India and China even. In other words, we always think in terms of Ishmaelites being just in the Middle East. Well, the effects of this group of people has reached and threaded itself into the corners of many areas of the earth. The Islamic empire stretched further than the Arab world, is what I'm trying to say. And if you know where North Africa is now, Southwest Asia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, those are huge parcels. The Philippines, islands of Indonesia, and then even across into South America. All of Ishmael's descendants have threads and fingers into all these aspects of other countries. Let me stop here and see if I'm just trying to give you a gist of the vastness of what this promise was. Because when you think of the promise made to Isaac's descendants, it's along the where the current land of Canaan is along the Jordan, along Jerusalem, along the Sinai, up in that little area here is where you usually think of the initial disposition that was given to Isaac's descendants, as compared to Ishmael, which is all over. Let's see what questions there are right now, or comments.
When you talk the Arabs, the word Arab peculiar in that it comes from a word that means a desert dweller, or someone who lives in the desert. In the Hebrew, Araba simply means desert. So I can see that two different ways, and maybe, of course, more ways than that. However, that I see it in two different ways. If we look at it literally, it speaks of those who dwell in desert places. If we speak of it spiritually, that means that there are people who were devoid of they dwelled in places where people were not in tune with or in balance with the universe. So are we saying that the descendants of Ishmael were people who did not totally understand who they were, or they were descendants who lived in under harsh conditions in a physical way or in a spiritual way, people who did not have a complete understanding or a thorough understanding of spirituality. I'm trying to work my way through this based upon the Hebrew and the etymology of that word, Arab. I'm asking for
Comment, question, class? You're asking, or just commenting?
Both.
Are you okay? I would say some of both, Pastor, because you do in fact have prophets like Muhammad who is said to descend from one of Ishmael's, who is a descendant of Qatar, one of Ishmael's sons. And the Prophet Muhammad was very spiritual in nature. But it does not mean that Ishmael's, when we go to the name, there was Qatar, it was the main military power of Ishmael. And that was the focus of that clan, that group. They've been mentioned in the Bible several times as being fierce warriors who came up against various other kings in the Bible. So I'm saying it's a little both. It's probably more of the desert aspect of and the parchness of not knowing or understanding spiritually who they are as Elohim. Yes. But I am also saying that they also did have threads of spiritualism as well, if that resonates.
It does. So let's take it to the next step. That being said, understanding that Muslims came from Ishmael, that if that is true, and I believe it is, then it's simply talking about Muslim means submission to God, period. One who submits to God. And Islam simply means submission. So if we look at it from that perspective, then the expectation of the descendants of Ishmael was that they would submit to the Creator. They would submit to Elohim. They would live lives of submission. And somewhere down the line, as with everything else, that got twisted. And what I mean by that is it became more materialistic, more ritualistic than it should have been, or more than it was from the beginning. And that is no different than what happened with Christianity. The difference between Christianity and Islam is that Islam simply means submission, and Christianity means whatever that the sect of Christians say it means. Whatever Baptists say it means, that's what it means. Whatever the Methodists say, whatever the Catholics say, that's what it means. But it doesn't have a fixed understanding of meaning that relates directly to being submissive to Elohim. Does that make sense?
Yes. One of the questions I have though is, can you contrast the name Israel, which is one who rules as God or wrestles with God, to that of the religion of Muslim, which is submission to God? Because my contention is that one can't rule until one submits and understands that who one is in relationship to the Creator.
I agree with that. The contrast, as I see it, is what you see as well. They're wrestling with Israel. That is still happening. That's taking place today. There's a continuous wrestling match going on within the confines of Christianity as well as Judaism, and that wrestling match is based upon the embracing of Jesus as a prophet versus the embracing of Jesus as God, as the Creator in flesh, with the exception of our being able to be that. With the submission, submission simply means, to me anyway, that you submit to the principles of the universe, or the principles of the Creator. And in doing so, that brings you in balance with, brings you in harmony with the universe itself. The wrestling takes place because there is an uncertainty as to what it means to submit, or whether or not you've already submitted based upon your birthright. So, and I do believe we're at the stage now where we have submitted to the wrong belief system or the wrong principles, and now what we are doing is bringing into this realm an understanding of what it means to submit. When the wrestling is over with, when you wrestle and you are able to see the righteousness of the principles, it is that point that you submit to them. And I do believe that this is purposely done, because to submit to something that you do not understand simply because somebody told you to, the question becomes, how committed to it are you? However, if you wrestle with it, if you question it, if you ponder what you are seeing, if you try it and see that it is real, and at that point you submit, then you're more committed to it than you would have been had you not taken that route. Are you able to see that?
Yes, thank you. Other comments about that? Yes.
Barbara.
Yes, sir.
This is Ron. I don't have a comment about that, but I think I have something that ties into it. I took this another direction, and I looked at donkey. You will be a wild donkey of a man. And when you look at donkey, it talks about one who bears the burden, right? It talks about who carries the load. But it comes to the root of it, which is Strong's, Hebrew Strong's 5782, means to rouse oneself, R-O-U-S-E, to rouse oneself or to awaken. So you mentioned that his descendants being practically all over the world, and I'm trying to couple this with what we were talking about on Monday night when we talked about it. No matter what route you take, as long as you're searching for truth, you run into it. You see it in yourself, and it leads you to understanding who you are. So could this wrestling match be the awakening that we're talking about here? You reach a point where you have questioned who and what you are and what the meaning of life is, or whatever, however route you take, and you reach a point where all those principles and concepts in you are being challenged, and it doesn't match from what you see in yourself. And being the burden bearer means that once you awaken to that, you see that you carry the load for the entire world. So them being sprinkled all over the place is just symbolically saying that the spirituality of truth is in every fiber of our being, and it is slowly being interwoven to in all religions, in all facets of life, that we don't see it or appreciate it yet, but that's what we're seeing and unraveling now. So just looking at that, and I guess trying to attach it to what we're saying and what I've heard you and Pastor talk about so far. So that's all.
Thank you, Ron. And when I talked about Ishmael's sons and descendants and where they are, remember that the tribes of Israel are the same. So your point is well taken. Both are all over the world, but in terms of numbers and in terms of identity, because that's one of the things in that promise, a nation. Arabs and Israelites have kept their identity in a sense, despite other countries like, Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, Napoleon, Hitler, Churchill, even Eisenhower, all trying to conquer, quote unquote, Arabs in one way or another, have not been able to do that. So I tend to agree with you with what you're saying, that we're seeing in each of the descendants of Abraham's sons, Ishmael and Isaac, the opportunity for them to know who they are. They may be taking different routes. And even though Abraham says his covenant is with Isaac, that does not preclude the opportunity for Ishmael's descendants also to understand and uncover that seed, that same seed of divinity that came from Father Abraham as well. But their routes may be different. Their routes may be more circuitous. Their routes may be, okay, we have wealth. The people of Ishmael, the descendants of Ishmael, living in the Middle East and living at the crossroads of continents, had opportunity to be somewhat in control of what passed through that area, and to gather wealth as a result of that. And so one of the parts of that promise not only relates to their identity as a nation of people, meaning Arabs, but it also has to do with being, if you will, acquiring wealth as well. When Abraham said, "Oh, that Ishmael might live in thy sight," that's what he said after the messenger, after he was told that he would have a son by Sarah a year or so from this point. He was saying, "Oh man, oh that Ishmael would." I believe he was saying, "Oh, that Ishmael would be the one to enjoy the rights of being the firstborn, et cetera, and as well as the spiritual rights as well." And that's when God made the promise that, okay, I hear you, as I've heard Ishmael, and he's going to be great. He's going to be a nation. It's going to be powerful. His people are going to be very wealthy, as we know they are. So he was not discounting that portion of it, but I made my covenant with Isaac in terms of, and I guess you were the one who asked the question, Juan, before. What's the covenant? What was the differences in the covenant made with Isaac and Ishmael? And we talked about the fact that they were essentially the same.
Yeah.
Except that with Isaac, he particularly made the covenant as relates to the spiritual connection with Isaac and his descendants. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Well, and it's just me thinking out loud, okay, and it may be so far from. What if the difference is I will make my covenant with Isaac, I will make my covenant with laughter. If you can look at the example of you having two children, and one is very self-sufficient, very responsible, and the other one is totally opposite, who do you give the most attention to? Could he be saying that laughter will move so far away from truth that he need not worry because I will always have my hand on him. I will have a way of bringing him back. And we have misinterpreted that to bring that into a whole movement of religion and with a total lack of understanding. Does that even make sense? Do you see that? Because I'm just trying to, as we said, the differences between the two. If you're not careful in how you read that, you miss it. But I'm going to connect you on a spiritual level that you cannot fall completely out of my sight. And if somebody sees something else, please straighten it out for me.
It's not something else, but I see something that you said in the beginning when you were talking about carrying the burden of the world. If you look at that word wild, it has as its root to be fruitful. And another translation for Isaac, he laughs, is also he rejoices. So if we are looking at that from that perspective, then as you said, Ron, we have to be cautious in how that is translated, right? because the truth of what both of those words represent, Ishmael and Isaac, what they represent is hidden deeply in their meaning. So God hears, and as a result of God hearing, there is rejoicing. Now, if we take Isaac and Ishmael and disconnect them from being physical human beings and see them as being concepts, then I think it would be clearer to see that when God hears, man rejoices, or there is rejoicing that takes place. And as a result of that rejoicing that takes place, the one who has cried out for the Creator to hear becomes the bearer of the burden for humanity. And that burden consists of not only being submissive to the will of God, but also bringing others to that place where they too are submissive to the will of God, with the understanding that submission is the result of hearing, and the wealth of which the Scripture speaks is a wealth that comes as a result of seeking the first above everything else, the kingdom of God and the righteousness, and everything else will be added to that. And the reason I point this out about wealth is because the wealth of the nations that the Scriptures speak of is not the type of wealth that we see in our society. The type of wealth that the Scripture speaks of is that a wealth that brings balance to all of humanity. The type of wealth that we are experiencing in this earth is one that brings about imbalance, which in itself is sinful in nature because it is at war with its environment and everyone who lives within it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Pastor, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would just, well, for me, and I'll be brief, I would just say it makes more sense. The rejoicing part I see in that, and that's a better tie-in. I can see that. I see how that all fits now. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Pastor. The thing that Isaac and Ishmael are the same in terms of balancing. They're the same. If you look at what the descendants of Ishmael are today, and you look at the descendants of Isaac, I mean, you might have individuals who are, you know, as they moved to their various areas that were given to them, they were like their father Abraham. You know, they were rugged. They were pioneers in a sense. They were courageous, brave. They were They were gifted. They had imagination. All of those things. And then if you look at wealth, and I heard what you said, Pastor, but it's almost like as well, what we're seeing is this vast wealth from just the eyes, EYES, versus the vast wealth spiritually that we all seek, or we all should seek, with the and seeing it with the eye. It's almost like we need them. It's showing us we need the melding of these two, the descendants of Isaac and the descendants of Ishmael, are two parts of the same concept, the same attribute of mankind who need to be balanced. Is the broader way that I see that. And so when one is promised wealth and power, and we see it realized in terms of the physical, and one is promised wealth and power as it relates to the spiritual, they both have to be joined and to be balanced in order to understand what true wealth and power are. Because you have individuals in both descendants who let this thing called pride get in the way. And that pride, from one side, can say, Abraham is my father, and I am the true descendant. The other one can say the same thing, but they both have the seed of Abraham in them. The point is, they can let the pride keep them from becoming the one people, the one entity that it needs to be and that it is. Comment.
Barbara, may I ask you a question?
Yes, too.
When we look at the what's taking place right now, when we look at Islam, when we look at Christianity, when we look at Judaism, the believers in those religions are at war with each other, because Christianity is saying it is the way, and Islam is saying it is the way. Islam recognizes Jesus as a prophet. Christians recognize him as a God, and Judaism and some sects recognize him as a prophet. Now, what is the origin? What is the foundation that supports the struggle between these religions? What is the foundation of that? Well, prior to 1948, there was not a struggle in the Middle East between any of those three. Prior to 1948, the struggle came from Catholicism directed towards anyone who believed in the scriptures based upon what the scripture actually says, and that friction was between the Catholicism and those who lived in Palestine, period. The culmination of that was the takeover of Palestine and calling it Israel. So the foundation that supports the battle that's taking place today comes from a confederation between Christians and Jews who all came from Eastern Europe and have declared that Islam is a bastardized religion and must be controlled or destroyed. Therefore, what we are looking at in regards to the struggle between what appears to be Isaac and Ishmael is actually a struggle between the desire of a group of people who have stolen concepts and made them be what they want them to be in order for them to be able to control the world. Because prior to this, there was minimal, if any, conflict in that area. So what we are dealing with is just as modern as anything else we're dealing with, i.e. racism. And regardless of how we look at it, That's exactly what it is, because of the way the battle is being waged. And the purpose of the battle that's being waged is no different than the purpose of the battle that has always been waged. And that is to extract resources for the wealth of the few and minimize the resources for the benefit of the many. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's almost like the original covenant that was made was a spiritual one, but that the people who say they are the chosen have not followed along that. It reminds me of something Ron just said, have not followed along that path of spiritualism. Instead, have who's got the most weaponized army in the area? That's people who are descendants of Israel. It's like they have. It's like they have taken on the traits of non-spiritualism to try to subdue, quote unquote, individuals into staying on their own side of the track, if you will. Because this is my country that was given to me by my spiritual spiritual ancestors, but I'm going to subdue you with weapons that are non-spiritual. It's not going to be with love and loving kindness and sharing and seeing you as my brother, seeing you as my equal. It's going to be subduing you so that you understand that I am in control. It's like the opposite has occurred, which is what I hear you saying has fed into this dissension, even more so now than before.
And I'm saying that the occupants of that landmass that was called Palestine are not descendants of Abraham. They have co-opted the concept of Abraham and used it for their advantage, just as Christians co-opted the concept of Jesus and used it for their advantage. That's what I'm saying. Because prior to 48, they were not there. They were not there. And that conflict did not exist. So just like the English came to this landmass and took it by force and all the other stuff that goes along with that, that's exactly what those who boarded the Exodus in Europe and ended up in that are forced to end up in that landmass did the same thing. So what I'm saying is that what we are engaging in is an effort to remove the corruption from the concept of Abraham or the concept of Isaac and Ishmael, to remove those corruptions so that the purity of truth can once again be not only recognized but embraced in that. Because if we look also at the Prophet Muhammad, he was one who engaged in battles against Catholicism in order to protect those whose beliefs were in line with what Jesus taught, as well as in line with what is considered the descendants of Ishmael. The fault line, the battle line that was drawn because the Romans or the Europeans that were in Rome decided that they were going to force everyone to conform to what they believed should be, as opposed to what actually was put forth by the scriptures. And I do understand that there is much discomfort in what I'm saying to some people because we have been conditioned to believe that Christianity had its origin in Rome and that Islam is a violent religion and Judaism is wrought with humility and everyone in the world is against them, when that is absolutely not true. The truth of the matter has to be revealed as it is revealed not only in the scriptures, but also through the annals of history that speak so loudly and clearly to us. I'm done.
Thank you. Other comments at this point? I'd like to just briefly just go through Ishmael's sons and what their names mean. See if we can glean any other truths from what we're talking about. And I know it's challenging to talk about Ishmael with just the total spiritual perspective without laying the groundwork of how so many people have seen it physically, because it's hard to translate that spiritual into the physical. But when we see with our physical what we believe, the illusion of the physical, then we can shatter the illusion of the physical by uncovering the spiritual side of that. I don't know if that resonates or not, but if people see the illusion, I have to identify the illusion first and then shatter that. One of the sons of Ishmael is called Nabal, and his name means high, prominent, height. And this is one of the sons that a lot has been, that more has been written about or alluded to even in the scriptures than any of the other ones. His name is usually tied to Assyrian records. Even the Jewish historian Josephus identified his sect of people, the Nabateans, and they lived in the area from the Euphrates to the Red Sea. Some of the pottery has been found in the coast of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. They were known to be seafarers, as well as, and this is what I found interesting, as well as the desert dwellers. They transported goods through the desert by caravan, but because of where they were located, they were also seafarers as well, which suggests that they had opportunity to transport beyond just their boundaries that were locked in a landmass. So those folk built some really impressive civilizations. They really dwelt in the city of Petra, which is part of the southern Jordan, and later Basra, which is southern Syria. Then some others are located in northern part of Saudi, what's today called Saudi Arabia. So his name means high and prominent, meaning standing out, known, seen, that kind of thing. Qatar is the next one, and it means dark-skinned. And again, as I alluded to earlier, this sect of Ishmael was the military might of his sons. They were gifted archers, and they were alluded to in a couple of areas in the Bible, but they later faded out of existence in terms of not being talked about anymore. In Psalm 125, they were talked about. Isaiah 42:11, they're mentioned in the Song of Praise. Jeremiah 2:10, the children of Israel were told to check with Qatar and see if, in other words, to consult with Qatar to see if it was an ordinary thing for a people to forsake their gods and turn to others. Jeremiah 49:28 talks about a prophecy against Arabia, and this was the foretelling of Nebuchadnezzar, that he would be destroyed. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon, and so they were seen and talked about in various portions of the Bible, and yet disappeared. Again, the name means dark skin, and the spiritual underpinning for this, I believe, has to do with the fact that it does not that skin color was not an issue. It was an integral part of who Ishmael's people are. What makes it an issue is people make it an issue. People begin to use it as a barrier to segregate, to dissect, to divide people. But it was an integral part originally of the attributes of that group of people. Adbeel is another one and the name means God's discipline. Mibsam, sweet smell. Mishnah, rumor or a thing heard. It's like it's a pot. You stir the pot, and what floats up is just like Isaac's laughter. What floats up is rumor, a thing heard, God's discipline. All of these are parts and parcels of the attributes of Ishmael's descendant. But they are parts and parcel of the attributes of anyone, just like they are parts and parcel of the attributes of the Israelites and their descendants. And that's why I say that all of it is one, and one is all. It is us who try to separate and keep apart that which we think is negative, or that which we think does not align with what we think is positive.
Barbara, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You made the statement that it is us that separate, or something to that nature. When you say us, you meaning who?
I mean, each of us today, even we make decisions, and we overlay on something our judgment and our perception, and a lot of times we bring with us the baggage of where our own judgments and perceptions came from and how they were developed in our lives, rather than seeing, rather than stripping away our own judgments, and rather than trying to place our own imperfections on others and interpreting what we want to interpret, to just lay all that aside. That's what we need to do. That all of that is in us, and we have the opportunity to diminish and not allow that to be central are the important part of who we are as Elohim. That cannot rule in us, and we be Elohim at the same time. We've got to be able to strip that away. And I don't necessarily mean you can get rid of something completely, but you don't allow it to take precedence and prominence in you. Like this, for instance, this guy Mishma, whose name is a thing heard, and it refers to rumors in a sense. And how many of us have just taken rumors as if they were truth? Look at what's happening in the media today. Something is put out there on the internet, and a whole parcel of people have not only seen that, partaken of it, but ingested it, and it's become part of who they are. And it's based in rumors and innuendos and lies. All of this speaks to what's in us too. And we have that opportunity not to allow it. We have that propensity, perhaps, but we are Elohim. And because we understand who we are, we make the decision not to allow that to rule in us. So all of these names simply are still showing us.
Well, I'm not placing blame, but maybe I am. Correct me if I'm wrong. Africans didn't do that until we met up with or bought into the lie of the European concept. I mean, yeah, get me straight on that. Because when we were little, I don't remember anything like this. Everybody was one color. I mean, I didn't know anything about a white person or whatever. So correct me on that, please.
Yeah, and that's part of what I was talking about the baggage that we bring with us and the judgment. Children playing together are just children, regardless of culture, regardless of skin color. It doesn't matter. But where do we get all of those layers and layers of negative things that allow us to begin to define people differently? And yes, it's been because of power, the lust for power. It's been pride. It's been what our eyes see, and I mean our, meaning not necessarily me, but us as a people, not necessarily people of color, but as a race of people, Europeans specifically, in an attempt to control, in an attempt to garner power, in an attempt to please self. Yeah, these descriptors and these definers have been put on people, whether it's people of color, whether it's people of different ethnic origins, whether it's people of different backgrounds. We allowed this to be placed on us, and some of us even today still accept that. But we can't do that from a spiritual perspective, because spiritual things go beyond those kinds of things. And so now that we understand who we are, we don't have to allow people to define who we are. We don't have to allow entities to define who we are. So I tend to agree with you, Evelyn, until you are told, until someone tells you that and tries to separate us by labeling us. Yeah, when we were children, we didn't think about any of that stuff.
I hear you. Thank you.
other comments?
I think that's what the scripture is about, and I think that's what we are doing now. Those attributes that you are reading from the descendants of Ishmael, those come from Ishmael. Those are his seeds, his thoughts, and I think as we look at and unravel the scriptures, what we're seeing is the spiritual energy that is out there to show us all who we are and what our capabilities are. And it's harder to buy into because of the concepts and the misguidance that have carried us through generations off the mark. And I see what Evelyn is saying in her question, and just the opposite is true. I think what we're doing now is uncovering those attributes, not only in Ishmael, but in us. It's each one of us is an Ishmael. Each one of us is an Isaac. Each one of us has these masculine and feminine attributes, and each one of us, have bought into on the other side this concept of division, and which has taken us in total different opposite direction, and it has caused us to chase, to think that what you have is better than what I have, and I'm trying to catch up with you. When if we see who we are, we don't have to catch up with anybody. We are already seeing that we are the bearers of truth and the responsibility that goes on with that. And that's why every lesson, whether we plan to or not, you hear the words forgiveness and love and compassion come up, because that's what the strength of all of this lies on. So that's who we are. That's the truth of who we are. And what we're trying to do now is recover truth and gain a better understanding of this, and become however this is going to enlighten the world, the earth. I don't know, but I just trust that we are in the right direction, and there is no division in anything that we do. There is no physical type of wealth when we speak of wealth or treasures or having abundance. We're talking about spiritual things, and as we uncover that, we'll be able to enlighten others or enlighten the earth. So I think what Evelyn's question and what you mentioned as well, Bob, is what we're doing just as we speak. But we don't always see the strength of it, or we don't always see the results of it. But we are headed in the right direction.
Barbara, are you talking?
I'm sorry, yes. Thank you. Another son's name is Duma, which means silence. And from a geographical perspective, this was a place which was a desert basin in the Middle East, and the site of a famous depression that's halfway between Syria and Mesopotamia. And the thing about this area that's called after the sun, Adamatu, is that it was strategically located such that it had water, and caravans stopped in that place. Caravans that were traders that were going from one place to another before going on to Syria or maybe going on to Babylonia. they stopped in that place. So it was strategically located at the entrance to North Arabia. But if you think about spiritual, what silence is, what does it do? It's part of meditation. It's part of being able to rest in hearing inwardly. It's all that we think about when we think about just being at peace with ourselves and being at peace within ourselves. So the name again speaks to one of the attributes of what we can partake of as well. Another son's name is Massa, which is bearing patiently. Another one is Hadad, which is thunder or shout. Naphish, Naphish, which means refresh or desire. Kadima, which means eastward. All of these, just to remind you, are not unlike attributes that show us who we are from Israel's descendants. A son seen, Reuben. Gad, a troop or a band. Asher, Naphtali, my wrestling. Zebulun, dwelling, a dwelling. Joseph, to add or increase. All of those are talking about attributes. And then finally there is the daughter, Mahala. Some versions call list her as Basemoth, but Mahala. Mahala was Ishmael's daughter, who married Esau. Esau was Jacob's brother, yes. Ishmael and Isaac were brothers. Ishmael's daughter, Mahalat, married one of Isaac's sons. And it's almost like, it's saying that usually the feminine energy can represent the Shekinah, and it's almost saying that, you know what, without the Shekinah, there is never any joining or coming together or bringing together or building together or being together of all of these attributes, these disparate attributes that are within each of us. That the Shekinah brings that attitude of loving kindness and mercy and gentleness, and just weds together, if we allow it to, all of those attributes in us that may be perceived as positive or negative. Doesn't matter. That with the Shekinah, we can overcome that and get balanced, be in balance with our Creator. So it's almost like a physical example of a spiritual truth when we look at the daughter of Ishmael marrying the son of his brother, Isaac.
What does Mahala mean?
Sweet smile, sweet smelling, It's a lute, L-U-T-E, or a lyre, the musical instrument. All of those.
Thanks.
All right. That's what I was going to use as a way to draw this to some kind of not necessarily conclusion, but to just make the point that it is the things that we've been talking about. The Shekinah is a manifestation of God in the earth, of the Creator in the earth, and without that, of which we all have access, we will continue on our separate spiritual journeys and being separated, and there can be no peace, there can be no rest without understanding who we are, and we cannot understand who we are apart from the manifestation of the Creator in the earth, and ultimately understand that we are the manifestation of the Creator in this realm. That is all I have for now. Other questions, concerns?
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
Based upon all that has been said over the weeks, especially what you have gone over today, the true nature of the attributes that makes us human is hidden in plain sight. And what I mean by that is it is hidden in the descendants of Ishmael, Isaac, Abraham, etc. And when I listened at the meanings of those names, as well as having looked at the meaning of the sons of Jacob, I saw something. Nowhere in those names do you find attributes of unforgiveness, murder, hatred, greed, etc. What we find is, in these attributes, are concepts that will bring humanity to a place of harmony, resulting in the existence of the human as it was supposed to be from the beginning. I've seen that each one of the sons, whether it be Jacob or Ishmael, both of them had one daughter, and that speaks volumes to me. In that the Shekinah, the feminine represents the Shekinah, and it says to me that the masculine is so headstrong until it must be tempered, and the tempering of that is that daughter, or that Shekinah that permeates, or that is a common thread through the attributes that are shown to us through these names. I also see that there will be no peace in this nation or in any nation until there is a reckoning or a reconciliation, should I say, with what's happening between the pretenders, those who falsely claim to be the descendants of Jacob. When the exposure takes place there, and the true descendants who possess the attributes that are attested to through the sons of Jacob and Ishmael, when that happens, it is then that reconciliation can take place. Reconciliation with humanity, with reconciliation with mankind, cannot take place as long as the falsehood is embraced and perpetuated as being the truth, and that being those who are the attitudes and concepts that control the landmass of Israel will not see peace until that landmass is in the hands of those, under the authority of those who are the descendants of Ishmael and Jacob, meaning that under the authority of righteousness, not necessarily individual people, but under the authority of the attributes that leads us to righteousness, peace, and harmony. And one of the major things I have seen throughout this discussion is that the idea of harmony, the idea of balance, speaks to what sin actually is. When we talk about sin being entanglement, sin is being out of harmony with the universe, and one of the major things that gets us puts this earth out of harmony with the universe is the idea of superiority, the idea of supremacy. And as long as we allow white supremacy to exist in this world, then white Caucasian attitude will be supreme. That does not apply only to America. That applies to Israel as well as the rest of the world. Why do I say that? Because that attitude, the attributes that came out of Europe, either it's going to control everything or it is going to destroy it. There is no harmony in the European in terms of living in harmony with his environment and with his neighbors. And that must change. And to be quite frank with you, the only way that I see that can possibly change is that those who embody forgiveness and peace and love and kindness are the ones who must make sure that the microcosm of love, peace, and harmony become the macrocosm to the world, so that there is no room for the hatred, there is no room for greed, there is no room for those who would murder in order to get their own way. So this is what I have gathered, and more, of course, from what has been discussed throughout the last few weeks, if not months. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well said. Yes.
So I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we bringing in the New World Order? And the New World Order is not what a lot of people think it is. Am I correct at that?
I would say we are bringing in the order to the world. The world order is determined by the world, meaning that who dominates this world, who dominates this earth. We are bringing order to the earth as opposed to the earth creating its own order.
So another way of saying that is we are the world. Each of us that understands who we are. We are the world. Any other comments? Okay. With that, let's stick a fork in it. I think I'm done, Pastor.
Okay. No questions, no comments? Some of you I see at 4.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your attention.
I thank Ron and both of you for opening this up, because it has shown us the substance with which we were created. Now, and it also has shown us something that I think, have taken for granted, and that is the power of Shekinah, the power of feminine energy, and shown us the necessity in making and embracing and respecting the authority that femininity has and has been given over life itself, by virtue of being the only womb through which life is able to come to a place of maturation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, everybody else, thank you so much. And we will see you later.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Good day.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Good afternoon, everybody.